I think we're going to see tonight together. We have a fair amount still to look at in Jacob. We looked at him last class. We're going to look at him again this class. I think we should, Lord willing, in the next hour, we will get through Jacob's life, what we're going to look at together in Genesis. So open to Genesis 29. If you'll open to Genesis 29, start. And what we're going to see is Jacob has come to live. Remember, he left. He really ran away from his brother, who's going to kill him for stealing his birthright and his blessing. And I think probably I can't tell you how many people contacted me or came up to see me, or so many of you came to see me last week to say how significant it was to realize that it was the blessing that Esau was upset about his birthright, and how brought up it is to our lives, to American Christianity, and to America as a whole. And I don't know how much I expressed this last week, but I think one of the reasons that you hear so much request for prayer in the upcoming election is because we're going to lose our blessing when Hillary becomes president. And if we care, listen, we're not going to lose our birthright when Hillary becomes president. That's not going to change. And if we care more about our birthright than we do about our blessings, we would care more about being the children of God. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Well, again, if you're here all the time, Sunday morning specifically and especially, we've been looking at what perfect is. The word is to tell us. Tell us is complete, and complete is the end. The whole is love. As I was saying when I was praying, the light walked clearly laid out for us, I think, in John, to walk in love to the brethren. And if we don't have love to one to another, we're lying about light, and we're really walking in darkness. So God help us to have love for each other, then around us, missionary heart that for the world. Turning into 29, we're going to begin in verse 15. I think we might have ended just before that. So Genesis chapter 29, beginning in verse 15. And what you're going to see here is Jacob is getting himself lives. Okay. Said unto Jacob, because of my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? In other words, you're not a slave, so you should get paid. Tell me, probably repeating what I'd heard, that Leah's eyes were somehow messed up, and probably not the case. The idea of tender-eyed really can kind of be the idea of doe-eyed or dove-eyed, or basically it's possible that she had beautiful eyes, but Rachel had beautiful everything. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like Leah's this homely, ugly, wow, I'd rather have the other sister. It's simply this one, I'd prefer this one. That's really what it comes out being. And again, this, of course, is subjective, because we're really talking about Jacob's opinion of the two sisters. And so his preference is toward Leah, but they can't be that much off one from the other, if you guys understand what I'm saying, because he's going to end up with the first one, the wrong one first, and he's still going to end up spending the night with her thinking that it's the sisters. So anyway, so Leah was tender-eyed. We're not going to preach any doctrine on that or anything, or form a church. I just wanted you to notice that I think the point that's being made here is he simply prefers Rachel. I guess I just don't want you guys to leave thinking poor Leah, she's this ugly dog, and Rachel's this beautiful sister. I just don't think that's fair to poor Leah, okay? So, but see, it says, and Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. So he knows he's asking for the second daughter first. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. Now, I'm not going to be unkind here, but he has no intent. Right then, he's lying. You know what I'm saying? And I think to myself, well, Jacob, you deserve this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jacob, you get everything you can by the energy of your own strength, and Laban's going to give you a run for your money. And by the way, for many years to come, he's going to give him a run for his money. So let's see what happens here. Abide with me. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had. Sounds great, doesn't it? unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place, and that evening they took Leah to him, and he went in unto her, and Laban gave unto him his daughter Leah, Zilpah, his maid, for an handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. Of course, it was also Leah the night before, but in the morning we beheld that it was Leah, I guess. And he said unto Laban, what is it that thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? Now the irony is Jacob's name means beguiler, okay? So he had Jacobed him. He had literally Jacobed him, okay? Wherefore then hast thou Jacobed me? And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet another 7 years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. Now, I've read this carefully, and I've read commentaries on this, and I believe I'm not mistaken in thinking that he literally was, quote unquote, married to Leah for a week, and then married Rachel, and then served 7 years afterwards to get her. So he got 2 wives in 2 weeks. The average man would know better than to do this, but he did it, all right? And he gets handmaidens to go with it, by the way. So Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served him yet 7 other years. So it does really appear, the wording here seems to indicate that what we're seeing here is indeed that he now has both of them. And again, now, this is what he wanted, right? This is what he wanted. He has Rachel. He didn't want Leah, but he has Leah. And he has these, and now what's coming at this point is the other 7 years. So we've seen 7 years, we're about to see the other 7 years. So these events that are taking place. And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. And I will pass through all thy flock today, and remove from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, which are spotted and speckled among the goats. Genesis 30:31. Oh, I'm sorry. I just jumped. I forgot I did. Okay. Genesis chapter. So now he's basically, again, he's working for hire. And what am I? Notice how he says this. Basically, notice how he words it. I'm going to take the spotted, the brown, and this should be my hire. So I'll just take all the imperfect. So shall my righteousness answer for me in the time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the sheep, they shall be counted stolen with me. So in other words, it makes it pretty simple. If they're not perfect, I'll have them. And if they are perfect, you can have them. And therefore, you can come anytime you want. In other words, we don't have to brand them. You can just come and say, well, these are speckled, these are spotted, these are perfect, and therefore it's okay that he has them. And if you find any ones that aren't, I will have stolen them. And Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word, because it's a really good deal, by the way. Now, where we grew up in Vermont, the cows where I grew up in Vermont are either brown or striped, basically. You either have Jersey cows or Holsteins. Those are basically the cows where I grew up. And so, but at this time in history, speckled, spotted, grizzled animals were not normal. Now, they have become normal. And again, it's pretty easy. A couple hundred years ago, there were no Dalmatians. There was just only a few different kinds of dogs a few hundred years ago. And we quickly figured out how to breed dogs to be anything we kind of wanted them to be. And you can do this with most animals. And what's really, again, I don't want to go into this in long detail, but you should study this sometime, because all the genetic code to make all these variants of all these animals are built into them. So they can, if you take a dog and move from Florida to Alaska, when the puppies are born, they will already be changed. They will already be born with a better chance of surviving in Alaska than their parents, because they will automatically, the genetics inside the animal will, ironically, they like to call this evolution. And it is an evolution. I mean, as my son Andrew would say, you can call it microevolution if you want to, but not macroevolution. The idea is they can vary, but they were designed to be able to do so. So when he's picking these out to be the few imperfect ones is the idea. And he removed that day of the he-goat that were ring-straked and spotted, and all the she-goat that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and he gave them unto the hands of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flock. So here's what he did. He started off, it's kind of like investing. He started off by dividing his off and sending his away. And then what he's going to do is he's going to tend Laban's flock. And he's going to continue to divide. Now, what happens if the ones that are over there produce perfectly white animals? Well, he keeps them, you see, because you watch me divide them off. You see what I'm saying? So now he's going to just divide. And so basically, every time he takes one, says, look, this one's speckled or spotted or grizzled or whatever. And, oh, yes, you can have that one too. Okay. Now, but what's interesting is Laban's not viewing both piles, if you will, simultaneously. And he's not realizing that this pile is getting larger than this pile is, because this pile doesn't stop breeding, by the way, when it leaves. They keep having more babies over here, too. So he's getting all the quote-unquote different ones, and we're going to find out in just a moment that he's helping this process, which is a funny thing. And by the way, I'm not even going to argue with you or discuss with you or talk about whether it's possible to put certain things in front of animals before they have babies and change it from one to the other. I'm just telling you he did it, and it works, okay? Now, I don't know if this is just in the providence of God or it's because God really wants Jacob to get back what Laban stole from him in a degree. When you're going to see at the end, we'll see this before we're done tonight, when they're done talking when they part from each other, they are both going to believe that the other one is a dirty, rotten, lying thief. You know what I'm saying? And the answer is they're both right. Okay, so let's just watch as we go forward. And remove from him the he-goats that were ring-straked, blah, 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 blah. Set 3 days' journey, verse 36. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white strakes in them. In other words, he stripped them and made these marks in them. And the white appear, which was in the rod. So they basically let it show through. And he set the rods, which he had pilled before the flocks, in the gutters, in the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. So the idea here is he's doing this on purpose. Now, again, that it works, you can decide whether that's regular, how do we say this, empirical science, or just a miracle. Either way, he's doing it on purpose. God is allowing him to do it, okay? Now, this is where you have to start getting into the question of, is it possible for people to behave ungodly and still succeed in doing so and profess that God did it for them? And the answer is yes. And you see this here. And you're going to, when we get done, nothing that we've read so far in Jacob's life or in Laban's life would lead you to believe that either one of them is humble or brokenhearted, contrite, or godly. And yet they're both literally going to be the victim when they're done, when this, it's like, you did all of this and it's all your fault. And you watch you just remember that, because you're going to see it as it goes forward. And Jacob did separate the lambs, this is verse 40, and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring strakes and all the brown. Okay, it's just going to keep doing this. And it came to pass, listen, here's the key. Whenever the stronger cattle did conceive, that he laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters. And when the feeble came, not so. Right? Because he doesn't want the feeble one. So basically, it's amazing. This guy's just flat out, Anyway, it is what it is. And man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maidservants and men servants and camels and asses. So he's doing great. He's doing great. Now, go to chapter 31, and this is for the sake of time. We're jumping for the sake of time. Again, we're not preaching through the whole book of Genesis. I just want you to see Jacob's life, because we're seeing the promises of God revealed in the life of Jacob. And I'm telling you, this helps me so much to be able to love my unsaved family and to understand more about what I was like both before I was saved And in this case, remember, Jacob has already met with God, right? He already met with God. God already promised to be his God. Jacob already agreed, if you'll do everything I need you to do and bring me back safely and feed me and water me and clothe me and everything, I'll let you, right? I mean, it's a terrible relationship, but what was your salvation like? Your salvation was completely one-sided. You cared nothing about the honor and glory of God. You cared nothing about you living a life that would give him honor and glory. You just wanted to not go to hell. You just wanted to have that salvation. You wanted to be a new creature. You wanted to be changed. And what he's doing here is not a lot different than that. Now, verse 36. So what's happened here is they're leaving. If you go back, let's see, go back to chapter 31. I think if you go back to the beginning of the chapter, 31 of the chapter, let's see here. Yeah, notice, okay, let's listen to this. Words of Laban's sons. So this is Jacob listening to his cousins, right? Saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. In other words, Jacob's become a very, very significantly rich and powerful man, and he took it all from our dad. That's what they're saying. And Jacob beheld the countenance. So after he hears them say this, and Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. In other words, he doesn't look at me like he used to look at me. And the Lord said unto Jacob, to the land of thy father and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So now you recognize he's saying to him, leave here, come back, and I will be with you. I will take care of you. And so he doesn't say that you've stolen. He doesn't. And so Jacob has the false standing, and you're going to see this when he meets Esau. He has standing that he has part of his own salvation. In other words, God's doing his part and he's doing his part, and together they're accomplishing his fortune. Not understanding that everything he's doing now is in the energy of his flesh, and it isn't honoring God in any way, but God is not concerned with going to work. Again, it's one of those things where this last Sunday, I'm a Patriots fan and Arizona football. So, I grew up a Patriots fan. And they played the Steelers, and I don't like them. Anyway, I know Ed Smith does. I mean, they're wonderful people in our church. I like them. But anyway, I promise you that before the game would have their and then people prayed for the Patriots to win, and people prayed for the Steelers to win, and every other team, by the way, that played everywhere. People and tonight, by the way, unless I misunderstand, the Cubs and the Indians start. People are praying someplace earnestly, by the way, earnestly. You think it's funny. Some of you won't even bother to watch the game, which is fine. I mean, I won't either. But some people are praying earnestly. Oh, Lord, please, we haven't won a World Series since, 1908? You know what I'm saying? Can't this be the year? That type of a thing. And so do we think that God is in heaven counting? Okay, that's 27 praying for the Indians, and you know what I'm saying? I mean, how does he decide who wins the game? And here's the answer. He doesn't care. That's not the point. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I believe that God wants to work in Laban's life, and I believe that God wants to work in Jacob's life, but I don't think he cares who has the cattle. Do you understand the point that I'm making? So I believe there are a lot of ungodly things that people say God gave them, and then God had nothing to do with it all. But in the providence of God, he didn't not let them have it, if you understand. Now, there is a time when God will literally take away things that you used to rely on for the sake of you coming to realize, well, he's going to take away all of Jacob's actual physical strength. He's going to make him literally crippled. And he's going to say, wait, you can't leave now. I'm crippled. And he's like, Jacob, you've been crippled all your life. Now you just finally realize it is a blessing the day you realize that you are crippled and you lean on God. And there are so many people that do not know this, and they really believe that they're in a 50-50 relationship with God. You are in a 100-0 relationship with God. And it's important that you understand that and realize that. Okay, so now in verse 36, so we see chapter 31, at the beginning of the chapter, Jacob says it's time to go, right? He's going to say in verse 5, look at verse 4, and Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see that your father's countenance, that is not toward me as before, but the God of my father. Notice this. Now, notice how he says this. This is very much like someone who God is dealing with who is unsaved. But the God of my father hath been with me, right? You can't go to heaven on your father's relationship with God. And right now, that's really the only relationship that he has with this God, is the providential goodness of God. But the providential goodness of God has been in our life all of our life. And thank God for that. It is the goodness of God that led us to repentance to begin with. So right now, he said, you leave, it's time to go. And he tells the girls, it's time to go. Now what's going to happen is Rachel's going to steal some stuff that she wants, that's basically hers and her father's, if you will. But she's going to take it. And he's going to come in verse 36 and chase him down, and he's going to, and well, just look at it. He's going to come and he's going to say, I'm going to search through your stuff. And now let's look at what Jacob says. And Jacob was wroth and chode, and this means to argue vehemently, and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff. And he has searched all his stuff, by the way. And what happened is, you can go back and read it, but Rachel pretended she couldn't get up. And Dad doesn't make her get up, and she's basically sitting on the stuff. So he has searched. Now, I don't think, unless I misunderstand the passage when I was looking through it, I don't think Jacob, ironically, is even aware that Rachel stole the stuff. So it's like the only time in Jacob's life, I think, that he actually hasn't stolen. And what's funny is, ironic is, watch a man who actually hasn't done something wrong, who's used to doing it, get all indignant when you accuse him of something that he hasn't done, and he's doing it right here. So, whereas I searched all my stuff, and now have you found any of thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren, that they may judge. In other words, show the stuff that was in my stuff that belongs to you, and they can judge, but there isn't anything. This 20 years have I been with thee, thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flocks have I not eaten. Can you just see him? What a great word. One of these babies was born. They all survived being born. He took care of them all. He didn't eat any of them when he was out in the field late at night, and it was hot. And he's like employee of the month. Amen. I mean, that's it. You know, one of the things that the Bible's pretty clear. How's it worded? Every man will profess his own good, but a good man who can find. Everybody's willing to tell you how great they are, but ask their wife. That's the way you ought to do it. Okay. All right. So. Verse 39, that which was torn, I brought not, I bear the loss of it, and of my hands didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen my affliction, and the labor of, he acts like he's the one leaving Egypt, doesn't he? And the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee. And Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest. I mean, come on, does he not have a good point? Look, dude, these are my girls, these are my grandchildren, these are all my cattle. Everything that you got, you came with nothing, and you're leaving with all of this, and it's all mine. That's his argument. And by the way, what's funny is you can listen to both our arguments and say, man, that's a good argument. You see what I'm saying? And that's how they have a very good argument, because they actually think they're right in their own eyes. And so he says, this is mine, and that which, and what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children, which they have borne? Verse 43. Now therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap. And they did eat there upon the heap, and called it this word. And Jacob called it Gilead. We're just going to call it that because it's easier to say. And by the way, both those words mean heap. If you can go look them up later if you want to. They both mean heap. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore, the name of it's called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee, when we are absent one from another. Now, by the way, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. So I want you to notice that what they're doing is they are agreeing to disagree. That's what they're doing. This is what you would call an amiable divorce, okay? They are separating from each other. They're not really interested in ever seeing each other again, but they're willing to say, we're going to let God let you keep your stuff, and we're going to let God let me keep my stuff, and we're going to let him judge between us, right? That's what he says when we're absent, even when we're not around each other. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. In other words, when you're gone, if you treat my daughters poorly, I'm going to ask God to watch out for them. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. The heap be witness, and the pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap with thee, and thou will not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. What's that? Did I say something wrong? I thought somebody was correcting me. To thee. So basically, this what they've done here is and how big a pile of rocks you suppose this really is? But basically what it is, you go over there, and I'll stay over here, and we'll love each other. It's like I remember last week when we were looking at it, it said basically they yelled and screamed at it and said, all right, I love you, goodbye. All right, I love you, goodbye. And that's really, you judge. Is that not exactly what's going on here? The God of Abraham, the God of their father, and Jacob swear by the fear of his father Isaac. Now swear by Jehovah, because I don't think he knows him. And what's interesting is I think he has some idea that he doesn't really know him. And by the way, this appears to me to be almost the beginning of a honesty in Jacob's life, a recognition that in other words, he's not taking even in oath that which doesn't belong to him, okay? When I say not taking that which doesn't belong to him, I think he really thinks he deserves all the animals that he's taking. As far as he's concerned, he is the victim. And as far as Laban is concerned, he is the victim. But this is how people who are ungodly always feel. They're the victim. You see what I'm saying? And so, but right here, he says, and Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice on the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban raised up and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. And again, I'm just telling you, this is like many reunions I went to where growing up. You know what I'm saying? We're all saying goodbye to each other, and I hope not to see you again anytime soon, okay? So now, Genesis chapter 32. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. This is wonderful. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother unto the land of Seir, Edom. And he commanded them, saying, thus shall you speak unto my lord Esau. Thus thy servant, Jacob, hath saith, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed there until now. And I have oxen and asses and flocks and men servants and women servants. And I have sent to tell my Lord grace in thy sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to thy brother Esau, and he also cometh to meet thee, and 400 men be with him. Now, there are three things, before you already know the response, because you guys have read your Bible, right? But there are three responses that he could have to this. One, he could go back to the fact that the host of God is with him. So it doesn't matter what his brother's intentions are. That would be the best response. The other one that he could be thinking is, my brother is looking forward to seeing me, and he's just coming to meet me. But he remembers when they left, right? And he knows how he's behaved while he's been around his uncle. So this is his attitude. He's coming, and he pictures men not as the greeting service, if you understand. He pictures them as soldiers, 400 soldiers, and they're going to come, and they're going to kill us and all of these animals. That's the plan, right? And he said, if Esau came to one company and smite it, then the other company, I did this wrong. 400 with him. And Jacob, now here, this is really what I wanted you to get. I apologize for saying this out of order because it has better import if I'd done it correctly. Verse 7, then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Now I want you to read this. In verse 2, when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. And then verse 7, and Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. They just don't go together, do they? Jacob went his way, and the angels of God met him. That's verse 1. And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Now, here's the difficulty. Again, I don't know where we are exactly, and I believe this is true, by the way, in many people's lives, their salvation and their sanctification. You can try to measure, if you want to, whether somebody's really a new creature or not, whether they're really born again and how far along they are. But I think you'll be disappointed if you do so. I know I have been as a pastor. What I have come to realize is the Lord knoweth those that are his. I do believe that we shall know them by their works. If you're going to lay hands on somebody to be involved in ministry, I do believe that there were things that will be clear that there's an evidence that this person really is a new creature. Many people saved that I thought were already saved. I've seen many people suddenly become serious-minded that I didn't think were ever going to become serious-minded. The point that I'm making here is I don't know where we are. It is very clear, is it not? Now remember, in Isaac's life, we saw the son of promise, the tremendous types of Christ. We realized later, we realized later in the context of the passages that we were studying, that while Isaac is a type of Christ, he's not very Christ-like. In other words, there's a great deal of failure in Isaac's life, but Isaac's life was not shown to us to reveal the promises of God in seeing Isaac's life change. That wasn't it. It was to see the types of Christ that God was going to show us. Abraham's life showed us one thing. Isaac's life showed us one thing. Jacob's life is showing us something else. And in Joshua's life, which we'll start seeing next week together, or the week after that, I'm not sure what the schedule is like, the next time we're together. Does anybody know any reason that's a good time to point this out? Are we together next week? We are, yes? Is that right? I'm not out of town. I'm not out of town anyway. Oh, that's not next week. So next week we are together. It's the following week. I think we have a class Monday and Tuesday night in this classroom. I'm really hoping that the things that Dr. Waite will share will be a real encouragement to you. And again, and knowing that you have an English Bible without it being, what's the word? Bashing everybody else in the world. If you understand what I'm saying. I really hope this man has given his life to this ministry. And I really hope that he will be able to express himself in such a way as to really be an encouragement. I'll be totally brokenhearted if it doesn't come across that way. In fact, we wouldn't have a Tuesday night class if the Monday night class isn't that kind of a class. But I think it can be. I think it will be. So I'm really looking forward. What I wanted you to say is the next time we get together, which will be next week, we will see in Joseph's life. Man, we're going to see some wonderful things in Joseph's life. And again, it's almost like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? I mean, here we are just in Genesis, and God is showing us all these things. He has been already promised, but now we're seeing in Jacob's life something we saw in Isaac's life. But still, the focus is really meant to be, I believe, on God's part in this relationship. So here we see Jacob is greatly afraid and distressed in verse 7. So he divides the people that were with him, the flocks, the herds, and the camels, into two bands. Splits them up. Why? And here's the reasoning. So if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. And Jacob said, O God, now notice it, no, he's going to pray. He's going to pray. Now notice again how he prays. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me. So in other words, he's got a little bit more personal here, but not my Lord, right? Just the Lord which said unto me. By the way, again, the Lord in your King James Bible, every time you see capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, you're seeing Jehovah. That's what that is. When you see the in front of it, it really is the reason that the word the is there so that you'll know that it is a proper noun. And it's important that you realize in the Hebrew there is no the, it's just Jehovah. But it's the Lord, if you understand what I'm saying. So, O God, right, which is Elohim, of my father Abraham, and God, Elohim, of my father Isaac, the Lord, Jehovah, which said to me. So now, by the way, Jehovah is his name. Jehovah, and he's revealed himself as Jehovah as his name. So Jehovah is his name, and he says, the Lord, which has said to me, return to thy country and to thy kindred. Now, by the way, here's what he's pointing out. Might be the very first time that Jacob is not only taking God at his word, he's using it, if you understand what I'm saying. And I think there's a little bit of Jacob left in it, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, it's a self-serving method, but what he's saying is basically, hey, you brought me here, right? This is going to work out, right? I mean, you told me, come back, right? I mean, so notice that's what he's doing. Return to thy country and thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. And that is what he said, yes? He said, look, it's time to pack up, it's time to leave, and I'm going to take care of you when you come back. So now would be a good time if you were going to do that. Now, but notice verse 10. And here we go. I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies, and of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. Now this is wonderful. This is the beginning. Salvation is a matter of repentance and faith. And here we see repentance. We see kind of weak faith, really, to a large degree. But still, he's at least going to the right God. I don't mean that to say like he's not going to Ra or Baal. At least he's going to God. And he is going to the right God. And he does have the right heart attitude about this. I'm not sure that he actually believes it. But notice what he says. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. I know he doesn't believe this, by the way, because his actions are about to. He prays a lot like American Christians, okay? He's going to pray, and then do in his own strength afterwards. And I don't know why we have prayer meetings often, because we pray. Everybody leaves and goes and does exactly what they think they have to do in order for these things to come to pass, instead of trusting that God will bring them to pass. For I fear him, lest he come and smite me and the mother and the children. That's honest, that's fine. And thou said, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And that's good. And he lodged there the same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother, 200 she-goat, and 20 he-goats, and 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 milk camel from their colts, 40 kine, 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. And he delivered them to the hand of his servants, every drove by themselves, meaning he sent, this is interesting. So what he's going to do is he's going to send a succession of gifts. Literally, you guys go. It's kind of like, at the wedding, when anybody that have been at a wedding, they say, wait for this many steps. We just graduated from school. Wait this many steps, and then you go, okay? So he's going to send them out, and he's going to send them out, and he's going to send them out, and he's going to send them out. And the idea is supposed to be, Esau's going to receive the first gift, then Esau's going to receive the second gift, and then somewhere about the third gift, he's supposed to think, man, my brother sure is nice. And then the fourth gift and the fifth gift, man, how could I ever think terrible about my brother? What was wrong with me? I'm just telling you, this is what he's doing, right? One after another, he send them out, and notice what he said. He put them in the hand of the servant and drove them out by themselves, and said to his servants, pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove, right? Lest you think I'm misunderstanding what's going on here. Nope, he's sending them out, and he says, make sure you arrive one after another. And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, and asketh thee, saying, whose art thou? And whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, they be thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent unto my Lord Esau. Servant and Lord, right? The one that stole your birthright and your blessing. You know what I'm saying? Servant and Lord. And behold, he also is behind us. It's so funny. Oh, and he's coming. He's coming too. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be in the fourth family group when he gets here, but he's coming. You know what I'm saying? And so he commanded the second and the third and all the following droves. So basically, one drove after another. On this manner ye shall speak unto Esau when you find him. Telling you. I'm just... Pray, and then work it out. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the average American Christian right there. And say ye moreover, behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face, peradventure he will accept of me. So he sent the present before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook, and sent all that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And many people point to this. I think it's an accurate thing to point to as the breaking, literally the breaking of Jacob. And Jacob now realizes that he is literally weak. I mean, again, he needs to go meet his brother. And please don't think I'm being unkind to Jacob, nor to Adam, the unsaved Christian who's coming to God, to say that we try in our own strength before we realize that we cannot meet God that way. You see what I'm saying? And so I really believe that he's praying to God because it's part of the formula. Or you could rub a rabbit's foot, or you could have a horseshoe over your door. I mean, it's all the same, if you understand what I'm saying, because he's not trusting God to accomplish this. He's prayed to God, but now he's working these things out, and now the strength he had has been taken from him. He's now going to be limping when he meets his brother. Now he needs the blessing of God, and he knows it. And he said, and what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou dost look after my name? And he blessed him. In other words, how do you not know who I am? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called to the name Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So that's the point he's making, is this is God wrestling with, obviously, this is what we would call a pre-incarnate view of Christ. And he passed over, and the sun rose, and he halted upon his thigh. He literally walked weakly. And next time, talk about how the Israelites don't eat that part anymore, because in honor of Jacob, who became Israel. So now, chapter 33, and I want to see. There are more things I want to look at. I do want to at least let's see if we can at least get through the passage we want to look at in 33. We have 34 and 35. I was wrong. We're going to do more Jacob next week. But I hope this has been a blessing. I hope it's an encouragement. So Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came. But let me just pause for a second. Is this not helpful? It's so helpful to me. Isn't it so helpful? One of the helpful things about the Old Testament is the narrative itself gives context, if you understand what I'm saying. In our New Testament, it is a instructive method. The way God teaches through the Greek language, which has been translated into our English, is an instructive, like a textbook session almost. But here we're just seeing it lived out, so you can just see the emotions and the practicality of things actually being worked out. You can see the dirt, you can feel the rocks, that type of a thing. Okay, so Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men, and he divided the children unto Leah, Rachel, and the two handmaids. Now remember, he's already divided them, right? And now he's dividing them. Okay, and he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. Okay, yeah, I don't know how you feel if you're one of the, it's like, wow, you know what I'm saying? If you're Rachel, you might be like, yeah, I always knew this, you know what I'm saying? And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. And Esau, now by the way, you read this over and over again, chapter 33. Sometimes I read this and I think Jacob went over in front of his wives. And sometimes when I read this, I think he sent his wives over in groups of 4. And then the last person that Esau meets is Jacob. So I'm not sure. I mean, the first one's obviously a lot more flattering. It's like, well, at least he went first. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not sure that he did. But anyway, you can read it over and over again, and you can just decide. And he kissed him, and they wept. By the way, you notice he says, passed over, bowed himself to the ground 7 times. So in other words, as he got close to his brother, he bowed, and he bowed, and he bowed, and he bowed, and he bowed. Remember, servant, Lord. Even though I have your birthright, I have everything, but And Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw the women and children, and said, Who are those with thee? And he said, The children which God has graciously given thy servant. Then the handmaidens came near, they and the children, and they bowed themselves. Leah also with her children came near and bowed themselves. And after came Joseph near with Rachel, and they bowed themselves. And he said, What meanest thou by all this which I met? And he said, These are to find grace. I mean, he just knows now. These are to find grace. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that which thou hast unto thyself. He said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand, for have I seen thy face, as though God, and thou wast pleased with me. Now he's really putting his brother a lot higher. I mean, I don't think there's a false humility here. I think there really is an acknowledgement that his brother has power over him, if you understand what I'm saying. Even though God has given power to Jacob, Jacob is not entering into that power. Even though he just made him Israel, he's still not really entering into it. So there is unbelief here, and you can be upset about it if you want to, or you can just recognize that at least there's the humility to recognize that his brother is greater than he is, which is true, but he's not trusting God completely yet. But so he says, now, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him, and he took it. Now, if you go back to this, in verse 10, if I now have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. Now, I believe what he's doing is this. He's putting an end to the death wish that Esau had when he left. In other words, you say that I found grace. So what I'd like you to do is receive this gift, and in the very same way that Laban and Jacob and their relationship with a pile of rocks. Look, let's just be honest and say this pile of rocks will keep me from killing you and you from killing me. How about we do that? In a very real sense, I think what he's saying is very similar things to Esau. I know you said you were going to kill me when I left, and I know I ran away like a coward. I have come back. God told me to come back. If you say you really love me, then do receive this as a token that you're not going to chase me down tomorrow and kill me. Okay? And he said, and he took it, verse 11, right? At the end of verse 11, Esau's going to take that gift. And he said, now this is really interesting. Let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee. So he's saying, basically, and this is an interesting thing. Let's we'll travel together. I'll lead the way because I know where I'm going. I'll lead the way and we'll go together. And he said unto him, my Lord knoweth that the children are tender and the flocks and the herds are young that are with me. And if men should overdrive them one day, all the flock will die. Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children that be able to endure, until I come unto my Lord, unto Seir. So I'm going to, you go home, I'll come where you live, but let me come at my own speed. And I don't think he's doing this out of fear of being with his brother. I believe this is more evidence of a selflessness that is beginning to be formed in Jacob's life, because he's going to take care of one of the things, listen, I wish, there were 250 to 300 people here, so basically our morning service was here instead of the group that's here right now. What people don't understand about a church family is people want to go at a certain speed and whatever they want to go forward in. In other words, some people want to go fast in everything. Some people want to go fast in a specific part of the ministry. And the point is, we can't go but at one speed, because we all have to go together. And we have to go not at the speed of Glenn Mongold. You know what I'm saying? If we go forward at the speed of Glenn Mongold, we go forward very, very quickly. We have to go forward at the speed of, and you can insert the name of whoever you think and however you feel. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to be mean-spirited. It really isn't, in the room, if we were going to run down the street, we would defer to Mrs. Driley's ability to run down the street, and we would go no faster than that. You see what I'm saying? Right? That's humanly speaking. But see, spiritually speaking, it's not necessarily the same people that slow us down, if you understand what I'm saying. But you can't look at them as if they're a burden or to be left behind. Now you can, but you can't be the pastor and look at it that way. And so I think what you're seeing here, I really identify, when I see what Jacob's doing here, I think, I've felt this way many, many times. And people say, Pastor, why aren't we blah, blah, blah yet? And I'm thinking, well, because we're just not ready. For example, why don't we have a warehouse, literally a warehouse building with forklifts and pallets of Bibles going overseas? I'd love to have that. We haven't come to that place in our church ministry yet. For either for First Bible or for Bearing Precious Seed, I would love for us to be able to do this. It's a great location for it. It's a great location right on the East Coast where they can put them on actual ships, and Glenn might be able to give tracts to the men that are going to carry the actual documents that leave here. But we've never been able to come to that. I don't know if we ever will be able to come to that, because it's a significant amount of money beyond the tithe and beyond the offering. It goes beyond offering. It goes beyond the tithe. It goes beyond faith promise, because we're already giving money to those ministries, if you understand what I'm saying. But in order to do that, we'd have to decide, look, we're going to take a lot of money. Well, we'd have to have a lot more people too before we could do that. So we'd have to have more staff before in other words, there's a lot of money that would have to be, God would have to trust us with, and I would love for him to be able to trust us with that, but we've got to grow together to be able to do that. And so if we can't pick whatever ministry you want to. If we can't realize that every ministry has significance not in itself, but in how it fits into the body. You see what I'm saying? It surprises me how people will ask me to favor a ministry, if you will. It's like, we need to put more money into this. It's like, you don't understand. That's one of just 30 ministries in our church. And it's not that I'd love to pour money into that. But what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Well, I'm not involved in those things. I don't care about those things. Exactly. You see what I'm saying? But there's nothing godly about that. So what you see here is, he doesn't say, brother, I am so happy that you love me and you're not going to kill me, and I'd be glad to go on with you. Hey, you guys want to see that the rest of us get here? It's not it. He stays back with the slowest moving people and moves at the speed that they are. And I'm very encouraged to see that in his life. And again, he's saying, I'm going to come, right? Verse 14, come. And Esau said, let me now leave thee some of the flock that are with me. And he said, what needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my... In other words, Esau is really trying to mingle them together. And I don't think that Jacob is trying to separate them. I think what he said, Terry, if it's really good, if you're good with me, I'm good with you, you go on, I'll meet you there. So Esau returned that day. On Esau now departs by himself with all, plus the gift and he's going on, and Jacob is moving slowly towards Seir and taking care of everybody at the same time. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house and made booths for the cattle. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. And Jacob came to Shalom, the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Panoramim, actually, and pitched his tent before the city. And he bought a parcel of field. Now again, remember this, they're living in a land that's not theirs, right? Canaan's not theirs. It is theirs. God's going to give it to them, but they don't own it yet. And he brought a parcel of field, and he spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And there he erected an altar. And this is where we'll end tonight. And this is basically what he says. This name here means El, right? El is the name for God. God is the God of Israel. That's what he's saying. That's what this name means. Basically what he's doing, now this is interesting because again, who's Israel? He is, right? Now when we read this name, it's like, oh, so God is the God of the nation of Israel. No, God is my God. Now how significant is this in Jacob's life? As far as we know, this is the first time he's ever known God as his God. This is the first time that he's ever realized that God was his God. And it is remarkable because it is in keeping when he went to Bethel, when he left Bethel. Remember, right? God lives here, right? This is God. This is the house of God. This is literally the gateway to heaven. And so he says, if you bring me back here, you'll be my God. Well, what's interesting is I don't believe that in anything other than name, I don't believe that was really going to be true in Jacob's life. But it is going to be true in Jacob's life, because it is true in Jacob's life. And what I mean by that is this. Salvation is of the Lord, and he's the one that works in your life in such a way. Surely after thou turnest me, I did turn. In every one of these turns in Jacob's life, Jacob was willing and involved. He wasn't perfect, but he was willing and he was involved. But he wasn't the author of any of it. Do you understand? The providence of God is at work in the hand of the child of God long before they are the child of God. And we are getting to see this in Jacob's life. So what we're getting to see is a supplanter, a trickster, a liar, a me person, which is just the person you see in the mirror anyway. And we're getting to see him going from being only himself, only selfish, to slowly coming to the place of acknowledging that he isn't sufficient, then to the place of acknowledging that he needs the power of God, then to the place of being broken by God, and then calling him my God. God is my God. Amen? All right, we'll end there. I've got some really tragic things to the beginning of next chapter, chapter 34. Very tragic event in the next chapter. It's going to do with the children, the daughter. We're going to see they're going to treat her poorly, and then the irony is they're going to treat her poorly with good intention, which is kind of a sad commentary. And then we're going to see the sons of Jacob respond very poorly and very, how do we want to say this? What's the word? Well, ironically, what you're going to see is they're going to lie. And you're going to say, I wonder where they learned that. You know what I'm saying? Father, thank you for your love to us. And Lord, we will see this next week. And Lord, it just comes to my mind now. Oh, how much my failures can be passed on to my children without me realizing it, Lord. Lord, our whatever it is, Lord, our weakness, our unbelief, our faithlessness, our anger, our frustration, our selfishness, Lord, all of these things, left to ourselves, it's all our kids could get from us, Lord. And we're going to see that from him. Lord, we thank you that he's a new creature. We thank you that he calls you his God, that you are his God, that you are going to later say you're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Lord, it's wonderful that you don't say you're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. For Lord, it was Jacob that you rescued, and it's Jacob that you turned, and it's Jacob that you changed. And yet, because his life had so much selfishness in it, that selfishness is going to cause much terrible death. Lord, I pray that you'd bless us, that there would be less of us, so much less of us. None of us, quite honestly. We would that there be none of us in our lives, Lord, but all your honor and glory for the good of those around us. We thank you for this. We praise you. We thank you for your word. We thank you for this time you gave us tonight to look for a few minutes